All right, we'll go ahead and get started at 7 o'clock. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. I wanted to first let everybody know that one of our newest council members, Rebecca Reckers, after 36 hours of labor, she has given birth to a little baby boy, Hawthorne Thomas Reckers. So we're very excited, and we have a little picture of him because he's so cute. So he was born at 12:56 today. So she had a long journey at the hospital. So keep her and her new little bundle in your prayers. All right, so we have a pretty packed agenda, so we'll move right along. So I want to introduce John Chamberlain with Van Gorder Walker, and he's going to talk about our audit.
Button. There we go. I'm a CPA and partner at Van Gorder Walker & Company in Erlanger, and appreciate the opportunity to do your audit work for you for 2018. We've already met with the Finance Committee and gone through the audit report pretty extensively, and so I'm going to give Council just a brief overview. I've got a few slides, and then I'll just step through the audit quickly and try to make this as quick as possible. The second slide there shows when it quits thinking. I don't, but I've given everyone handouts, so if you want me just to go through the handouts, and the audience won't be able to see it, but the handout should work. On the second slide, it shows our opinion, and our opinion is what we call an unmodified opinion. That means no modifications were required to be made to the opinion for it to be fairly stated. That's the highest opinion that we give, and that's what you want from us. That's the highest opinion. As a part of every audit, we do a review of internal controls and compliance and report on that in the financial statements. And we found no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal controls that we're required to report, and that's good. That's what you want. And then also no instances of non-compliance with any laws, grant agreements, your loan covenants, anything like that to report. So good job there. As a part of every audit, we do provide a letter to the Finance Committee that has it's a governance letter, and it reports to them any issues that we may have had in the audit. And so we did provide that to the Finance Committee, and then they have reviewed that. We made no what we call unplanned audit adjustments. So Steve had everything right where it should have been. We did make material adjustments to recognize the change in the net pension liability, and that's just a standard annual adjustment that we make for you. And then we made a material adjustment to recognize what's called the OPEB, or the other post-employment benefits liability for your health insurance for CSRS. And that's new this year. It's a new requirement this year. And we adjusted in about $4.7 million of what looks like debt to your financial position for that net pension liability. And I'll show you where that is here in a moment. But we added that in, and then that will be a standard adjustment every year as well. And then we also submitted your CAFR, your Consolidated Annual Financial Report, to the Government Finance Officers Association for your annual award. So good job, Steve, of having that. The next slide is just a cash and assets slide. Your total cash investments have leveled off about the past 3 years. You see your cash there at about right at $10 million. Investments about $4.2 million. The blue bar is your total assets up there north of $16 million. A rule of thumb is to have about 3 months of operating cash on hand. For the city of Erlanger, that'd be right at $4.8 million. You have right at $10 million in cash and $4.2 million of investment. So you have about $9 million worth of cash, about 9 months of cash on hand. So a good strong cash position for the city. The next slide is just a debt comparison. And really, all I'm really going to talk about here is you see that the red bar versus the pink bar. The red is your long-term debt. You've got that down to where you've got about $1.3 million. There we go. The $1.3 million in long-term debt with the red and the orange combined. And so that's your long-term debt and the current portion of your long-term debt. So that's down a very small, very manageable number for the city. The ever-growing pink bar is your SERS liability that we're required to report on your financial statements. Again, this is not part of your funds. You don't pay cash out of hand for this. You don't really budget for this other than your SERS payments. But you see that's growing, and then added about $4 million this year, almost $5 million for the other post-employment benefits that we added this year. Because of a new accounting standard. The next slide just shows revenues versus expenditures for the last few years. 2018 had an excess of revenues over expenditures, about a $467,000 loss compared to about a $1.4 million gain in the prior year. Spending was up about $1.6 million over 2017, but the vast majority of that increase was from capital improvement spending. You had about a $3.6 million planned capital asset expenditure last year. So basically you're saving funds. Every year you have a net income, just like you do at home. You have a net income, and then when you're ready to do big expenditures, you have those funds in the bank, and you make those expenditures. You're not drawing debt on those expenditures. So a good planned spending for the city. The city also has a self-imposed fund balance target of 30% of expenditures. So fund balance is 30% of expenditures. Yours is right at 84%. So you're well above your self-imposed target. The next slide is the total revenues of $18.7 million, licenses and permits, so the lion's share of that. Taxes only at about $4.6 million. Charges for services, that includes things like trash, right at $2 million. Intergovernmental revenues and grants at almost $800,000. Next slide is expenditures by department. So this is where you spend your funds, right at $19 million for the year. $6 million is the police department, $4 for fire and EMS. There's that $3.6 in capital outlay. Public works right at $2 million, and general government are right about the same. These next few slides, I've done this every year, and everybody seems to like it. So it just shows some of your major departments and what you've spent over time. It shows the increase or decrease over the years. So the first one, and I'm not going to talk too much about these, Sherry, so you can go through these relatively quickly. But you can see police, about a 6.5% increase. Fire, about a 7.6% increase. Capital outlay, and this one jumps all around based on your spending, obviously. Public works, a slight decrease. And general government, a slight increase. Debt service, just what you would expect it to be. And then IT expenditures, slightly up. Okay? The financial statements themselves, since it is a CAFR, the financial statements are pretty long. So again, I'm really only going to hit the high points. Pages 9 through 13 is the audit opinion, and that's 2.5 pages of accounting legalese to call it an unmodified opinion. Lawyers. Pages 16 through 22 is the management's discussion and analysis, and this is what I always charge the City Council to. If you don't do anything else, read the management's discussion and analysis. It's a good executive summary of the financial statements. It is comparative to 2017. Lots of information in here, and Steve does a lot of work on this, and so it's a lot of information. And it is your fiduciary responsibility as council members to understand the financial statements and the financial position of the city. So I do charge you to if you don't do anything else, read that. A lot of good information, and it's a doorway into understanding your financial statements. Page 23 is the statement of net position. So this is the government-wide position for the city. It includes all of your long-term assets and long-term liabilities. So you see there cash and cash equivalents right there at 10.1 million, investments at 4.2 million. You have receivables about 2.7 million, and then capital assets of about 23 million net of depreciation, 24 million. Deferred outflows of resources are basically a function of the pension, the CSRS pension liability. That's all included in that calculation. And so that $11 million number is just an actuarial number that's based on your pension requirement. The accounts payables and accrued liabilities there right at $1 million. Your non-current liabilities there about 1.3 million, and then your net pension and post-employment benefit liability, again, of about 30.5 million. Again, that's not a number that someone's going to send you a bill for, but it's they're going to claw that back through higher CSRS rates, and you've already seen that as you've done your budget, or as you're doing your budget for 2019. You'll see your CSRS rates going up, across the board for both hazardous and non-hazardous, and that's how they're clawing that number back is through those increased CSRS rates. The deferred inflow of resources is also related to pension and OPEB. Again, that's an actuarial number. And then assets minus liabilities is your net position of $18.9 million. Page 25 is the balance sheet. It's broken down by your three major funds: your general fund, your capital assets fund, and your police forfeiture fund, and then a total column. And you see there total assets are right at 17 million. Total liabilities of about 1.1 million. Assets minus liabilities, that's your total fund balance right at 16 million. That does not include all those long-term assets, all those long-term liabilities. Page 26 is a statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. This is the income statement for the city, again broken down by fund. So $18 million in revenue, $19 million in expenditures, a net $467,000 loss in fund balance. You do have 3 pages, 28 through 30, is the statement of net position and the income statement and the cash flow statement for your internal service fund. This is your health and dental internal service fund that you're managing internally. And so you do have an income statement that acts as a proprietary fund for the city. So that's an internal set of financials. Page 31 through 54 are the notes to the financial statement. Again, if you want to dig deeper into the financials and understand more about the city's financials, the notes to the financial statements are the next logical place to read. Lots of information in here. I'm not going to dwell on those for too long. Page 55 is the budget to actual for the general fund. And the first column is the original budget. The second column is an amendment column. The third column is a final budget. The fourth column over is the actual column, and then the fifth column is a variance column. And so what you want are positive variances, more revenue than you actually budgeted. So you want your actual revenue to be higher than your budgeted revenue, and you want your actual expenditures to be lower than your budgeted revenue. So that's kind of the goal of the city, and you see there you did accomplish that. Actual revenues in total were about $161,000 more resources available than what you budgeted, and about $474,000 less in expenditures than what you budgeted in the general fund. Page 56 through 59 are the more required disclosures for CSRS. That's your net pension liability disclosures and OPEB disclosures for both your hazardous and non-hazardous employees. 61 and 62 are budgetary comparison schedules for your minor funds, for your capital asset fund, and your police forfeiture funds. Those are set up the same way. And again, solid positive variances there for the most part. The last part of the CAFR is your statistical section, and lots of statistical data in here, and Steve puts all that together and does a good job with that. Page 83 and 84 is the report on internal control and compliance. And again, I'll reiterate, no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in internal control to report, and no issues of noncompliance to report. That's about as fast as I can do a CAFR. Like I said, I know the Finance Committee has reviewed this and asked a plethora of really good questions. Any questions from the audience just in general about the audit process or the audit report? And by audience, I mean the council.
Looks like you got it all. Thank you very much, Don.
All right.
I appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
All right, we'll move along. Mr. Kramer, the NLC service line briefing.
We got Mike Chambers.
Thank you very much, Mayor, members of council. I appreciate a few minutes of your time tonight, and I'll try to keep it brief for you. But I did want to come here and let you know about the National League of Cities Service Line Program. My name is Mike Chambers, and just to give you a little bit of a background, the reason the National League of Cities has gotten involved with this type of program is they understand infrastructure is just getting older and older, especially when it comes to water and sewer lines. And one of the big issues is while cities and municipalities are doing their part to maintain their water and sewer lines, you have these miles and miles of lines that are on your residence property that really no one thinks about, the lateral service lines. And a lot of times when the resident has a frozen water line that breaks or their sewer lines clogged with tree roots or it fails, their first call is to the city. You guys will send out one of the public works team, make sure your lines are working properly. 99% of the time, your line's fine because you're doing the upkeep on it. And then you're kind of put in the bad position to tell the resident, Mr. and Mrs. Resident, we found the issue. It's on your side of the property. You're going to have a contractor come out and repair it. A lot of residents can become upset because most don't even realize they're responsible for these lines until they have an issue. That's where this program comes in. It has two goals. First off, it's simply an educational program. We do a free public awareness campaign to all of the homeowners here in the city, letting them know that these lines are their responsibility, giving them some tips to maintain them, to keep them up to date. And then secondly is to give them a chance to transfer that risk from themselves over to the NLC program through a low-cost monthly warranty. The nice part for the city is this is a fully turnkey program. We handle all the marketing, all the billing, all the customer service, all the claims management, and there's no cost or anything for your residents to participate. Now for your residents, if they choose to enroll, it's completely optional for them. It's just something that's available. They get a full coverage of their water and or sewer line. So in the case of the water line, we'll cover everything from where it enters their house all the way up to where it connects to this curb stop. Anything from frozen lines, leaking lines, clogged lines, broken lines, anything like that is covered under the warranty. In the case of the sewer line, it will actually cover from the point entry to the house all the way to where it connects to the city main. So that'll cover anything from, just simple, something gets flushed down there or it's clogged with tree roots, all the way up to a full replacement of the line, even repairing any kind of public sidewalk or concrete work as well. Now, the way we market the program, it's all done through direct mail. We don't do any telemarketing or door-to-door sales or anything like that. Twice a year, typically in the spring and the fall, we'll mail a letter out to all of your homeowners, letting them know about the program. Before that is ever mailed, though, we actually provide it to the city so you have an opportunity to review it, make sure you're happy with all the language that's in it. If there's anything specific to the city that you want added, then we'll include that for you. Now, when the resident has an issue with their line, all they do is call us. We have a 1-800 number that answers 24 hours a day, 7 days a week by a live person, and then we dispatch the job to a local contractor. That's another huge benefit of the program as well, is that we only use contractors from the city that participate. So basically, a couple of reasons to do that: keep the dollars here in the community, but more importantly, the local contractors know what the codes are, they know the permits that they have to pull, and make sure that everything gets fixed the way the city wants it to be repaired. The program's been in effect since 2010 with the National League of Cities. Currently, we have 650 partners across the country. There's 12 here in Kentucky, including 8 here in the local region. A few of the cities around the area that are participating is Edgewood, Lakeside Park, Ellesmere, Villa Hills, a couple other ones that are escaping me right now. But since the program's inception, we've repaired over 1.2 million lines across the country for residential savings of $364 million. All while maintaining a 98% customer satisfaction rating, A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. And then this year, for the second time in the past 5 years, we were awarded the Torch Award from the Better Business Bureau, which is given to the top companies for business ethics. So that's kind of the program in a nutshell. I'd like to answer any questions for you.
I'll just give a quick history. This was brought up by a citizen who lives in Commonwealth. They just put about $4,000 or $6,000 into a sewer line that they had to replace on their property. They had heard that Edgewood was doing this program, which is, we actually, when I got that call, I think I had spoke to you a few weeks beforehand or at a conference. So looking into it, you know, all it is a signature from the mayor to agree to do this program. There is a benefit for the city to get some revenue on this. The option that I asked Mike to give us is the one with no revenue, and what that is, the amount of revenue that we would have made off of each contract, and correct me if
That's
I'm
correct,
off
yes.
track here. Whatever money that we would have made off of that, it just gets sent to the citizen as a discount. So instead of us tracking any kind of income on it, I think it's probably a better option just to give that discount right to the citizen if they choose to participate in this. With, you know, a lot of the older properties we have around here, it might be a good option for some of the homeowners to get involved. It doesn't cost the city anything. It's optional for the citizens, but it does give them the opportunity. So if anybody has any other questions or doesn't think the city should get involved with this, you know, let me know now. Yes, ma'am.
I was just curious how much it costs the homeowner
Yeah, great question.
in general. I mean, it
yeah.
might be different with different properties. but-
Actually, here in Kentucky, we all have the same rate. So the sewer line warranty runs $7.75. As Mr. Kramer said, you would actually get a discount of $7.25. It's 50 cents is what the revenue would be to the city, so it'd be $7.25 here in Erlanger. The water line runs $5.75 a month, so it would be $5.25 a month for the residents. So $5.25 and $7.25.
I'm confused. So that means the citizens don't pay anything? I mean,
No, they pay $7.25 a month would be their
Oh,
their
for
rate.
all three protections? or-
For the sewer line, and then $5.25 a month for the water line warranty.
So what's the total?
So that would be.
About $13, a little under
About
$13.
$13.
Right.
Okay.
Right, so what it is for $13 if they decide to do that. If there's any clogs in their sewer lines because of roots, anybody has an older house has had roots go into the old system, or if their water lines freeze out in the yard. I know we had at least one in Riggs Avenue last year where that was a big ordeal. They thought it was the water district and turned out to be the resident, so we had a big issue with that. This would just fix that. They would be completely covered from curb to their house if they had this warranty. So they would contact them, they would arrange all the repairs and everything, and it's just an insurance policy on your sewer and water lines.
So
And it's optional.
does it cover the inside of the house or?
No, typically your homeowners would cover any damage, and that's
Okay.
kind of how the program came about. The homeowners will cover
Right.
inside, the city will cover in the street, and then nothing for that. for
Gotcha,
that middle.
okay. So
And I-
$13 and something,
Yeah.
in case somebody asks me.
Right. And then the nice part too is there's
$12.50.
no deductible, no service fees or anything like that. So basically, it's just the monthly payment. That's the only thing the residents have out of their pocket.
The mayor's better at math, it's $12.50. So I was up, so it's 12.
What, so I guess I'm confused. What do we need from council?
It'll be an agreement that the mayor will sign. The agreement we would sign is that it's what do you call it, non-revenue?
Yeah, non-revenue.
The
So
Non-revenue
discount for the
agreement,
resident.
which means the residents would get the 50 cents each discount instead of us. And
So-
that's just to allow them to put out flyers. So what it is
So what
when,
prevents from selling the product now?
Uh,
I mean, that's the piece I don't
That's a
understand.
great question. The way we market the program is through like a co-mark. So it'll say the city of Erlanger or the National League of Cities, because we want to educate your residents, that sort of thing. If we were to just come in as the National League of Cities, most residents have never heard of that. So most of them would never ever read the educational material. It would get tossed away. So by doing it as a co-marketed material, we're able to get it to all the residents, offer them a lower cost, and that the big part is the full coverage, you know.
And what kind of, I guess in these other cities, what kind of penetration rate or?
Yeah, typically, it's pretty consistent everywhere we go. We typically only mail the letters for 3 years. The first time we mail to your residents, about 8 to 10% of the homeowners will enroll. After 3 years, it can be, typically about 30 to 35%. Edgewood's one of, it's one, they've had a lot of issues there, so a lot of the residents have enrolled. I think we're up to 60 or so percent of all their homeowners are enrolled in the program there.
70% of all of their homeowners,
All
or
their-
just the ones you've targeted? Are you
All-
targeting?
Yeah, and that's the nice part about our program too, is we want to educate all your homeowners, so we don't actually target areas, new areas or anything. All of your homeowners will get the letter to let them know. Yes, Yes, ma'am.
Is it going to the property owner or the residents?
It'll go to
Because-
if it's a landlord, they can enroll, but the property owner has to be the one to enroll. A renter can't enroll in the program. So,
Is that the same rate for?
yeah, same rate for everybody.
Renee, do you have a question?
Yes, is this monthly, semi-annual, quarterly,
Residents can
yearly?
pay, yeah, they can pay however they choose. If they pay monthly, they'll do that. If they do take both products, they get a discount. I think it's 10%, so it's actually a little cheaper than the $12.50, so.
Any concerns with us moving forward with this? Okay. Like I said, before we did this and letters going out, I wanted the council to have an opportunity to take a look at it. There's a folder there. If you guys have any questions, feel free to get with me and I can get with Mike if I don't know the answer, and then I'll be in touch. Thanks for coming out.
Thank you so
Hope
much.
your ankle heals there.
Yeah, we're getting there. Thanks a lot. Have a great day, guys.
Okay, Mr. Cahill.
Yeah, so we just had our second meeting tonight, but I want to talk about the first one with everybody. So the Master Facilities Task Force met 2 weeks ago, and we came up with a consensus on what we think how we should move forward, and we'll kind of outline that for you a little bit. But let's just start with the consensus. Is we'd like to look at a feasibility study of centralizing our government services into one location, which would be our government, our fire, police, EMS, public works, all into one area. The reason for that is we looked at the study that was provided to us and we reviewed that. Mr. Glenn ran some numbers for us. It's going to cost us either $8 million either way over a 3 to 5 year period in order to repair, replace, or take care of all the issues and concerns that were identified in the facility study. Looking at that and looking at the long-term needs of the city, I'll give you a perfect example. When I started on the fire and EMS department, the fire department had one fire marshal and one firefighter. So, so as you can see, over the next 20 years, our needs are going to be pretty high. Tonight, we kind of discussed what those needs would be, and from that point of view, what we would be looking at as far as recommendations moving forward. But I think we'd like to start with that feasibility study. So the group's here. Any questions you guys might have for us?
Okay. I mean, if we're talking about a feasibility study, do we have any idea? I mean, we're looking at the same cost from last time. Do we have any sense of what that might be yet?
Well, the repair, we do not have that. We have no information on that. We would have to get out bids and things like that, but we can tell you that the repairs, and that's over that 3 to 5 year period, would be $8 million, and we know that that could change any time during that 3 to 5 year period just to hit every repair noted on this, the original study.
So that, do we have a summary of what those capital investments would be over that 3 to 5 years?
Yes. So.
I'm just curious as, what we're including that.
Yeah, we have that right here. Mr. Glenn put that together, and we can provide that for everybody to review. Peter, can we get that electronic?
I'll send it out tomorrow.
Okay.
You can get with me.
Some of those repairs are on things that we don't even own. Is that correct?
That is correct. Some of the areas that we
Especially
have.
the public works area?
Correct.
I mean, I don't know if I want to spend that much money on something we don't own.
Yeah, those repairs are a little bit smaller, and some of those may have to occur while we're doing this feasibility study, but that's not going to impact us at the cost of that $8 million that we're looking at.
Right. All right. Thank you.
So the feasibility study would be just to assess whether we want to put everything into one facility?
Yeah, and you have to think about it. So when we looked at this from the standpoint, when we looked at needs today, the feasibility study, there's a lot of things that we were looking at, and that needs assessment we kind of did today. I asked people to bring their top 5 to me, and that's going to determine our design, our location, our space, and also what our 20-year plan is based on that, based on personnel, based on equipment, based on what we think we're going to be looking at 20 years from now. It is a huge investment, but right now we can be nickeled and dimed throughout the next 20 years for what we have, or we can move forward with a plan to determine what is needed and necessary in the city I mean, we're over 18,000 people right now. We have the 2020 census is coming up. We're not shrinking, that's for sure.
No, you're right. And I guess as I'm, thinking about it, in those capital investments, we're talking, $8 million. I mean, are we saying that that entire $8 million is all things that are critical, or there's some desired things in there as well?
These are all identified in that initial study that we had completed.
Yeah, I've seen that initial study. I'm just, I know that there are some things that were, that felt like.
Some were low, some were low level. They are
Right, there
low
were some
level.
low-level things, but, I don't know that that all of those were necessarily critical to, the operations. But I guess one of the things what I don't know, and that maybe someone who has history, is when we renovated or rebuilt this facility, what was the cost involved with this facility?
I'm gonna say 4.5, 5 million.
So we're talking, we'll call it $5 million just for this facility. So we're really realistically looking at a, $20+ million investment if we're going to start to combine all of these locations.
That's correct. And we did have Mr. Bodie there. We discussed some of the options looking at that. We do have I think some of our bonds are coming off, things like that we could look at as far as moving forward with this, so.
Yeah, and I guess the reason that I'm asking the question, and I know that there's the whole feasibility study. I always look at them. If we're going to make those investments, are they, what is the impact of doing or not doing those things for our residents? And if it means a new city building, how does that better serve? Obviously we've got the people inside the building, but our residents, and how does, if we need to build a new fire station, how's that going to improve our fire service or things like that? Not to say that certain renovations are not needed, but that's kind of my litmus test when I'm thinking about those
I understand.
things.
I think that's what we're looking at is what are we going to provide
Okay.
to our future citizens as far as the services that we have and how quickly we can provide them. So, that's one of the things when we had the discussion with the fire department is going to be the location and response times. With the police department, it's going to be having the ability to control some of the things such as, evidence rooms, things like that, armory as we expand our services so that we can do the things that we need to do. This could take some of the impact too of the senior center too that we're looking at. So there are some things that are viable for the citizens too there, not just the services, but it is the services that we're providing them. So,
Thanks.
okay.
The only thing I would add to Gary and Tom, you can correct me, you may have talked about this at your meeting, but part of the study was to improve this building, but in doing that, they were taking up the back parking lot, because there's no way to get more parking in this spot. So by half of that plan was to do that, but it creates an even bigger problem that we already have, which is parking.
Yeah.
So, the only logical, I think, on this spot is to go up, but that would be a complete tear down, I would think.
Yeah, and we had discussed that too, when we look at future planning, and I gave the example of one of the hospitals, Mayo Clinic, whenever they build to go up.
Yeah.
So they reinforce the structure so it can go up more. So when you're looking at that from that standpoint, we also need to look at 20 years, but also what's going to happen. I think no matter what we do, we're going to underestimate what the needs are for the citizens and the services here. The parking goes away. How many times have we had the wall issue now that we've had to repair? The location is not built for what we have here.
And I guess my point was that study doesn't really fix, they're not fixing the limitations that we have here. They're just throwing, hey, we're going to expand the building, but they're not taking into account what that creates even more issues of. And so that $8 million isn't really even a perfect solution.
Yeah.
If you would spend $8 million, you really wouldn't have a great solution. The firehouse doesn't have their own parking lot. What they're parking in now is the school board's parking lot that luckily that they let us borrow.
And, we have to consider the needs of, the businesses also that we're bringing on board. We've brought in a large number of warehouses. What
Yeah.
service are we going to provide them, so.
Well, and I think that's probably the biggest impact, right, is the businesses. We're just about running out of space where you can put in additional houses.
Yes.
So,
Well, we do have 165 homes going over.
We do.
Yep, on Narrows Road, as we know. And, you still have some property behind there that's available, so you have a few areas here and there that are touch and go, but, we need to look at that from the standpoint of what do we need to do for that.
Yeah.
So, good questions, thank you, though.
We'll get the documentation that you have sent out to everybody.
all right.
Okay. All right. Next thing on the list is the insurance premium tax conversation. Mr. Meyer?
Yep. I know there's, one of the reasons that I wanted to ask to kind of get this on here for tonight was, and then I know there's been a number of conversations, people saying that, they may support some reduction in this insurance premium tax. And really where I wanted to kind of get to today was, is this the right time to do it? There are deadlines or timings that need to occur to have those effective. So I think any changes are always effective July the 1st. So at the beginning of the fiscal year, and we've got to essentially notify the insurance commissioner 100 days in advance of that. So essentially mid-March, the third week of March, we would have to have that completed by. And I know that's not, a great deal of time, but I did ask Mr. Bodie, so, if there was a desire to do something for this next fiscal year, I think it'd be prudent to have that into the budget cycles, but a reduction from 10% to, say, 9.5%, based on his projections of $2,946,180, that would be a $147,310 reduction in revenues for next fiscal year if we decided we wanted to do something now. So I figured, just being where we're at, we would have to do a first reading and then a special meeting if we wanted to do anything for this calendar year. And maybe we, it's everyone's collective opinion that we just kind of hold off this year, wait till next year. But I at least wanted to bring the conversation forward.
I've been with you, and several of us have, about reducing the premium, and I talked to Mr. Bodie and I talked to Matt, and we found out that like we have 10% is the insurance premium now. You can do up to 12%, but that just got changed within the last couple years to 15%. What Jack is checking into, and Steve and Matt, that we just recently found out, was there's a possibility that the state or the county can take whatever we don't. So my fear is if we drop it to 9.5 and they decide, hey, the pensions, we're going to come in and take this much, I'd rather the city get the money than the county or the state. So I want to do it, but I think I want to wait until we find out those answers.
Yeah, so I didn't think there was any legislation that enabled that now, because we had that, even if we, moved that number, Kenton County couldn't do anything. I do believe that, I thought there was some pending legislation that would change that I know KLC is vigorously, opposing.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Lobbying against. So, no, I would agree. I mean, I don't want for us to make a change and just give the revenue to the
them.
county.
Yeah,
Right
I
now,
know.
don't
So
wanna do that.
as much as I've been on board with that, that was so disappointing to hear. And I'm like, I want to make sure that we know exactly what can happen that before
Yeah.
we do it. Unfortunately, that might delay it, but
So it sounds like, I mean, I don't know if anybody else has other inputs, but, maybe we'd wait till after this legislative session, see if they make a change that impacts that. And there's no reason that we couldn't decide to, to pass that legislation as soon as they get through this legislative session. We don't have to wait until the last,
right.
Okay.
Right. Thanks.
But we still have to have it in before March?
If we were going to make a change, we don't have to do anything right now, but if we wanted to make a change and reduce it or increase it, we have to make that change, pass, have a second reading and notify the insurance commissioner by that March timeframe.
Okay, because my initial thought was 0.25%. You said a half. I was thinking of a quarter and kind of pairing it with either a 1% or 2% property tax decrease. So not doing a full half, but having a combo of the two.
I mean, is that the desire, is to push forward? Because, I mean, if we're going to do a quarter, right, we're $75,000. Yep.
Are you on board with waiting to find out about or did you?
I think we do need to make sure.
Yeah.
And who did you say was looking into that?
I think Jack was, wasn't he?
Yeah, Jack is talking with Kenton County, but Steve also found, I'm not sure where it was, that if we do reduce it, the actually insurance company can take that difference as their fee. So we just need to verify that that's.
Yeah, but
What we don't want to do is take a reduction for the city and the citizens don't get the
well,
reduction. We
if
just
you
need to
actually, I
verify.
think most of the insurance companies are taking their maximum allowed fee right now,
Okay.
which is 15%. So if you actually do the math, it's about 11.5% that's on the insurance bill. So most, at least the ones that I've seen, they're maxing out, taking the maximum amount that they're legally allowed to according to Kentucky statutes.
Okay. We just didn't have because we saw it was either 15% or something, whichever one was more, I guess, that they are allowed to, and we just want to verify what we're dealing with if we would do that.
As far as the three different insurance companies that I've looked at since I've been following this, they're taking the maximum that they're allowed to. Yep.
No doubt.
Does anybody else have anything to add about it? 1/4%, 0.5%, what's your thoughts?
I agree with Corrine. I think we need to wait and see what Mr. Gatlin finds for us, because that's ridiculous. I mean, we wanted to make this change in favor of the citizens, not somebody else. So I think we should wait and see. I don't think that's a problem.
Do you have an opinion if we find that it will benefit the citizens? Do you have an opinion, either half or 1/4? I mean, we can talk about it at a later date, but I'm just thinking about the time frame. If we find out it will be a benefit and it's something that we want to move forward on.
Well, and I guess there's some other pieces that and I don't know how much data we actually get back, but I know there's different service lines, and not all cities in the county charge on the different insurance service lines. I understand that, health insurance is one of the ones that is taxed, which is kind of one of those hidden pieces that are out there, because, I guess most people don't know that their Erlanger business is charging them for an additional tax, on that. So I don't know do we get any sort of information about, how much per the various service lines?
I looked into that last year. Right now, we do not have it broken down. I think that's something that we are going to have to ask the state to be able to provide us that information, because right now it just comes in as one.
Yeah,
one
and I believe
stream.
that's something we can do, right? Request an audit or something?
I'll ask.
Okay. That'd be helpful too, because if it, is more impactful to, to really just eliminate one altogether, maybe that makes sense, whether it's life insurance or, okay.
Yeah, I'll weigh in on this as well. If all things stay equal as it is, if things stay as they are now, and our budget can support it, I certainly would encourage a 0.5% decrease in the insurance premium and the 2% decrease in the property tax.
Anybody else have any comments, questions, concerns? Okay. We'll move forward to the Duke Energy franchise fee. Mr. Meyer.
Yep. I guess another item that I just wanted to bring up. I know that one way or another we've got to take some action in the next few months with I believe the current 3% that's added to utility bills now. The original intention was to pay for 911 services, which we no longer have. So there's a couple options. One, we could act to actually repeal it and say that we're going to stop it. We can just let it expire and not renew it, or we could pass legislation and then approve it again if we want to continue that. I think I looked at the current year budget was, I think, around $657,000 roughly was what that revenue was. I don't have it in front of me at the moment. I forgot to write the number down, but I know that there a number of people indicated some desire to at least talk about it, so I figured I'd, bring that out too and see if there was, desire to do anything with that at this point.
So here's the concern. So we have the pension contribution increases. So it's, for the next 10 years at least, we're going to see 12% increase. That's if the phase-in legislation remains, which, God willing, it will. The pension contribution increase that we would see almost completely is covered by the franchise fee. So my thought process would be, let's allocate those funds directly to pension contribution increases. So they were 911, but now with this new liability, create a new reserve fund. So every year, that money, the franchise fee money, goes into a fund specifically set aside for pension contribution increases. Just an idea.
I think that's a great idea. Also, another thing I want to bring up is, and I don't know where I heard this from, but it was a couple years ago, and I think Mark Field said it, but I'm not sure. Can the county put a 3% on the people, on the franchise fee if we don't? Is that something that can happen too? Do we know?
I'll check into that. I've never heard of that.
Yeah.
That that's an option, nor have I heard that
You don't think
the
so? Okay.
county has
Okay.
ever brought that
Yeah,
up.
I didn't think they could because
Okay.
it's, they could in unincorporated parts of Kenton County, but
But
not within the
for city
incorporated, yeah.
partners. Okay. One of the things I was thinking of, piggybacking on what Jessica said, if we can do the premium tax, if we can do that without the state or the insurance company taking it, I honestly think we could do 1/4% for the insurance premium, and then franchise fee allocate for the pension nightmare we're going to be faced with. And then maybe possibly lowering the real estate 3 or 4%, just to give the residents a break. Because it's about, for 2%, it's about 74,000, I think, something like that. Yeah. So we could probably easily do the 3 or 4% to make up for the difference for not getting rid of the franchise fee. And that way, the franchise fee could go for that, be earmarked for that. So that's kind of my thoughts.
Yeah, and I think there's, I get cautious of playing, too many what-if scenarios, right? If we're going to say what if, then I think we should probably be consistent with that and say, you know what if we're not going to reduce insurance premium, we're not going to reduce property taxes because we're that concerned about the what if. One of the reasons that I really like the energy franchise fee is that affects all of the residents, not necessarily the property owners, which the insurance premium would, which the property taxes would, but all the renters that are in the city, those that are living on some extreme fixed incomes. We're talking about a 3% reduction in their utility bills, and 3% can make a big difference. So it is a 3%, right? But it affects everybody that's living in the city, not just those that have an owned property. So if we've got a big apartment complex across the street, they don't, that business owner doesn't care about that 3% because it's the 200 residents that are living in that complex that are affected by that 3%. And sometimes I've seen it firsthand that $3, $4, $5 a month for some people makes a big difference.
You can tell me to shut up whenever. I'm sorry. So what if? Can we do the franchise fee for 2%? Like lower it 1%? Is that a possibility? That would bring it down to $450,000, I think. Or would that work? Okay.
Here's the thing. We can run any of these numbers and understand how it would play out. So if that's something that you would find is valuable, is that something?
No, yeah, sure. I think, there's certainly plenty of options, right? We've got you know, the audit had, what, $10 million in unrestricted funds, right? Even if we cut it out this year and said, you know, hey, we realized we really made a mistake, we could start to phase that back in and not really have a detrimental impact to any of the other services we're providing. So we're, you know, thanks to all the hard work of, you know, the administration and the previous councils, you know, we're in a, you know, a positive situation where we can be a little bit more flexible. I mean, we're not, you know, tied to making any decisions right now.
Yeah, so if
but we do have the opportunity to do so.
So if we lower it to 2%, that helps the people that don't have
Sure.
homes, and then we could still give them a break on the real estate of 2 or 3%, and then it covers more bases that way or something. Yeah, yeah. Good problems to have.
Okay, any other comments? Vicki?
I just have one quick one, and this is just my philosophy. I don't like eliminating anything and then coming back and have to tack it back on because you are really going to have that just human nature. I mean, that's how I would react as a citizen. Well, how come it went away and now it's back? You know, it's easier to ease back off a little bit, but I like the idea of running the numbers so that we can actually see what's going to happen. That would be great. Thanks.
Well, yeah, and I think that would be good along with the year-over-year pension, at least with the way the current plan is, to actually see those numbers side by side and what those impacts are.
Anybody else? Okay, we'll go ahead and move on. I'm going to quickly talk about the text amendment potential for the Montessori school on Holbert. So recently, Dave Hahn and I were contacted by Bernie Wessels, who's a council member in Fort Wright, and he also owns a construction company, and Julie Preziosi. She is the executive director of the Northern Kentucky Montessori Center. And they're looking at doing a joint venture for the property that's owned by the Long family that's between Silver Lake and the library. So the majority of that piece of property is zoned industrial. In order to do the joint venture of what they're wanting to do, they also need to use the residential properties that are along Holbert Avenue. Dave, do you by any chance have the picture of what they're looking at doing? So the joint venture includes, Bernie's part is it's a warehouse, but it looks very retail. About 37,000 square feet on the very close to, yeah, this is very conceptual, but we can pass it around. 45,000 square feet, a warehouse. And then in the back of it, that would butt up to Holbert Avenue, would be the Montessori school. So what they're asking, the industrial zone is just fine. It's zoned perfectly for what he wants to put there. However, the residential zone currently only allows public and parochial schools in that zone. And technically, a Montessori school is a private school. So what they're asking council is, can we go to the Planning Commission and ask for a text amendment to put that one word into the zone to allow a private school? We'll go ahead and pass this around.
I got just a question about the private school. Is that a for-profit or nonprofit? I'm just wondering if, you know, if by doing that, does that, and it's now a nonprofit joint venture, is there, you know, no property tax or, you know, other revenues that we may lose out on from the city?
You wouldn't get it with a public school or a parochial school either, though, right?
No, correct. But right now, if they, you know, put the warehouse
Oh,
there,
right.
we would generate revenues off of that business directly, whereas, you know, we might lose out on property tax from a warehouse if it is a nonprofit joint venture.
The warehouse would be separate. I mean, it would be two separate businesses. The only joint venture is Bernie Wessels wants to buy all the property and basically lease, and he wants to build the Montessori school for Julie and lease the building to her. So it's not technically a joint venture per se. Yeah, it's completely separate entities. So there would be tax revenue coming from the warehouse facility.
So the map on the board there, the Erlanger IP1, the big large section there, that's the proposed warehouse. All those lots on Hulbert is where the school is looking to be placed.
All those lots on Hulbert now, I don't see the zone. What zone is that? Is that R2?
Mr. Meyer, to answer your question, I was just looking at the website for the Montessori School, and it says in 1967 they were founded as a 501c3 nonprofit.
So the business owner essentially just wants that to be an allowed use for the business?
Mm-hmm.
Basically, the two were both interested in the property. So Bernie went to Julie and kind of put this idea, this plan together as a way for them to both meet their needs.
And that, I know that, and sometimes in the R1F, there's some other allowed uses, right? Or some of the residential zones. Is Montessori school is not one of them?
I've got it up there.
Oh, thanks.
It specifically says, where is it, Dave? Public and parochial schools. But we've defined those and checked the definition, and that Montessori school does not fall into the two.
Well, but
That's not a nursery school either?
her definition, in our definitions it actually defines all three separately. Parochial school it defines, private school it defines, public school it defines. And private is certainly, as you can read there, is not one that's listed as a condition. Those are just all conditional uses, and that would remain as a conditional use, but it would have to still go before the Board of Adjustment.
So we'd say that the text amendment is adding the Montessori school to the R1F?
Adding private schools, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Either
if
by
they were-
amending the definitions or amending something that, somehow to get it in there, yes.
Thanks, Corinne.
So if we were to want to do this, we'd have to have a resolution.
That's correct. Typically,
To allow-
Jack prepares a resolution for the next council meeting, giving me the authority to go down and file that application at the board, at the Planning Commission.
Yeah.
Any other questions? I know the concept drawing hasn't made its way around.
And that is very conceptual at this particular point, so.
I don't see why we wouldn't. I mean, it fits with the same intent of the current zoning.
Yeah, I was just well, I guess some of my customers were geared more around the IP1. I had missed that we were actually just adding that into R1F. All right.
We're confused. We're looking at this drawing. Is this one right here that I'm pointing to, is that the warehouse?
Yeah.
And then this would be the school? Okay, that's what we thought, but
Yeah, that's all logs. Like I said, I got called last week about somebody asked me about that was one of the logs. Yeah. Logistics and warehouses. Just need some good roads for the trucks.
You guys have any questions, concerns,
What's for snacks?
comments? Yay, nay?
We're good.
You good? You good? Cool. You good?
So we'd be drafting a resolution for the next council meeting, is that right? Okay.
Okay. Next, potential zone change for Commonwealth from Baker to Holbert. So I put some documentation in front of you guys. This is just in the infancy stages, but we've gone to the planning and development, planning PDS, and asked them to potentially do a small area study to understand the impact of changing the zone right here on Commonwealth from Baker to Holbert. Just this one little line, and how that would impact the community. We would be changing it to a professional office use zone. Currently, the corner right here is a spot zone. So if you want to pull that up, the attorney's office that's right here, basically that allows single family, and it also allows financial institutions, attorneys' offices, and a couple of other professional uses. So the thought is to continue that professional office use zone down to Holbert. This is just an idea, but we threw this out there to PDS. It would cost, if you look on the second page, for them to do all of the legwork, the public engagement, the GIS and code analysis, the code language, the text amendment and map amendment potential. It would cost the city $1,642. They take care of basically everything. The timeline there, because it's a small study that we're looking for them to do, they could have it done by June. Both sides of Commonwealth. So what I'm looking for is your thoughts on this idea and whether we should move forward with the $1,600 small area study with PDS.
I've got a question for Mr. Hahn. Dave, as we're thinking about, the Z21 initiative that we're getting ready to look at and looking at all the zone changes across the entire city, at that point in time, is that zone for zone mapping, or do you have the opportunity to change map lines as well?
You will have the opportunity to change map lines as well when the Z21 project is,
okay,
when we implement the Z21, you'll have the opportunity to change
Yeah,
zoning names, boundary lines, everything.
That's
Now,
kind of
that
what
might be the ways down the line.
Well, I'm thinking about, the work that we'll do over the next year, associated with that. And maybe I'm optimistic and think we can get it done, this calendar year, but.
That's optimistic, but yeah.
I'm feeling optimistic.
That's good.
Do we, if we do, what if? No, not if, not if. When we get it done this year, do we just kind of wait until that point to do that?
The thought process was to have this study and make sure it's something that we want to do first. So then it kind of pairs along with the Z21. So then if the study comes in and it is something that's beneficial for the community, then we move forward and tie it in with the Z21. So then we don't have to have any additional costs to change that zone prior. Then it's all done in one fell swoop. Does it make sense?
So depending on what zone we pick at that point, I think one of the goals here is to have a limited number of non-conforming properties, right?
That's one of the goals
Yeah.
right, not to try to make anything non-conforming. But it could work hand in hand, as the mayor mentioned, with this.
I'd like to see the report,
And that was 1642?
16, yeah.
That's a lot of work for that amount of money
Yeah,
that
I
they,
would say. And they will contact
Yes.
everybody around here, there, and all? Yeah.
they'll hold the hearings and
Same
and
thing we
meet the people.
usually do.
and-
I'm for it.
Anybody else have, Vicki?
I just have some input from some citizens who live in that area. They are not for it at all. And,
Well, that's okay.
you know, that doesn't mean everybody that lives there would be against it, but my concern too is the traffic. Commonwealth is a nightmare at certain hours of the day, you know, when people are coming home from work. So I don't know what, I guess that study would show us that impact, but I do know that a lot of citizens, not a lot, but I should say some of the citizens that live there have expressed a concern to me that they are not in favor of this at all. So when this company, PDS, contacts them, they'll probably have that input, right? Okay.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
most definitely.
Yeah. So I guess it would be interesting to see what they would think of the traffic flow and the citizens' comments. Okay, that's fine. I'm on board.
And speaking of citizen contact, we also talked to PDS about talking to the people on Erlanger Road and Graves, because they're going to be adjacent to the backside, just so nobody's shocked by any of this. Everybody kind of understands it, which I think will be a benefit compared to our last letter that went out.
Correct.
Well, I may be wrong, but I thought Commonwealth was the designated, it was a state road, and it was designated as a state road because it's actually the recommended route when 75's messed up. So does that affect anything as far as being allowed to do certain things with Commonwealth?
Not as far as zoning is concerned. You're right, that is a state-maintained road. But as far as the zoning of the property, that's the city's.
Well, I wish they'd take responsibility and pave it a little bit better.
Well, that's a whole different meeting.
That's bad. It's a good thing there's a turn lane, because I usually take half of the turn lane to stay away from the holes. Please don't give me a ticket.
Well, I think you were deciding to turn and then you changed your mind, right?
So are we comfortable moving forward with the small area study for $1,600 with PDS? Sure.
When they eventually widen that road, will they take that in consideration with that study? Do you know?
I don't know.
Okay. Okay.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you, thank you. Okay. Last item on the agenda, tattoo parlor and pet hotel text amendment request. Mr. Meyer?
Yeah, I had asked for this to be withheld from the first reading last month. My understanding was that when this process started during the last council term, that it would wait for council discussion before it, came back up. So here it is today. I know one of the things that we wanted to do, and we understand it's not a problem, is actually splitting this so that there would be a separate vote on both the tattoo parlor and pet hotel text amendment. But I think based on the favorable recommendation from Kent County Planning Commission, at least I'm thinking that we just split it and then bring both of them back up for first reading, and then if we decide to vote it down at that point.
That's fine.
We do, Dave, do you want me to talk, or do you want to? So today, just trying to save you a trip. Today, we did get notified by the Pet Hotel that they are no longer interested in that location. So I think, April, you can correct me, but we have two options now. We can do nothing, or we can go ahead and still make it a conditional use.
Yeah, and I'm thinking if the thought was that was a good use of the property before, why would we not, continue?
Just voted in.
Yeah.
Right. So I just want everybody to be aware of that, because it's already written. I mean, we're
That's a
good to
good
go
idea.
either way, but just so everybody knows
Well,
that
that's a good idea.
currently they backed out of that.
Yeah, then it opens up, maybe somebody else will come in.
Yeah.
By splitting it apart, do we have to go back to PDS? Do they have to revise anything or go back through their process? And is the,
When I spoke with Jack about this earlier, he said that it would be written as two separate ordinances. So there's no problem with that.
is there, Mr. Meyer, do you mind if I ask why you'd want to split them apart or why you'd want to vote separately on them?
Well, I know that there was, at least in my opinion, if there was, some discussion about one versus the other, I personally am in favor of both of them. I think, there's a lot better health benefits with some of the services that you're going to get out of a tattoo parlor. As you start to learn about these things, you can go to the mall and get your ear pierced and get an infection, or you can go to a place that has, better sanitation, better regulation, and then, just, putting our residents in a better position. I also like the idea of, just opening up that opportunity for, for other businesses that are there, that want to be here and want to operate in Erlanger.
And I was one of them that wanted to split it. I don't like having two totally different things on the same ordinance, so that way if people had the option to
Vote no.
vote no on one of them and not,
Absolutely.
so that was all that was.
Question, on the pet hotel, I know we did our homework and we searched out, that particular company was very reputable. What concerns me is if we do the conditional, can any pet hotel come in there? We don't have to approve them first? That's my only concern.
As a conditional use, it has to be approved either way. It doesn't matter what the name of the company is. Conditional means it's conditional and that we would have to approve it.
We good, Dave?
Trying to save you some steps, Mr. Hahn.
But I think, yeah, never mind. I'm good.
Okay, so we're going to split the two, and we'll have first reading for both next month. Any
Yes,
other
ma'am.
questions? Comments, concerns? That's it. Have a great night.